Hello and welcome to your post-match reaction here on Four Lads Had a Dream. My name's Andrew. I'm joined tonight by definitely one of my very favourite podders, Mark, because he's the only one who turns up for these anymore. Mark, pleasure to be talking to you, mate. Kenny and Stevie were obviously at the game, and I believe the vlog has just finished uploading now. So definitely don't click away from this. Please keep watching this, but after you're done watching this, then go over and check out and see how Kenny and Stevie got on a very rainy night over at Ibrox, Mark. We'll talk through the game. We'll talk through the lineups. We'll talk through all the questionable decision-making that the referee had. But before we get to that, I mean, what a crap night for a game of football.
Well, first and foremost, good to get our first one. I know it doesn't mean much, but, it'd been disappointing to go through the campaign and not actually have a win. So, all in all, I think I was pleased to see. Also, we're going into a bit more detail of the lineups, but obviously back four, a bit of makeshift in comparison to what we've seen in prior weeks. But all in all, good win for Rangers, and we keep that winning momentum up, which is most important, given that's 7 wins in a row now. So all in all, we keep that winning run going and take into the weekend.
Yeah, first time since February 2024 that we've strung together 7 wins in a row. So, I mean, that, if nothing else, speaks to how inconsistent we've been, in recent years. So that was good to say. And Rangers lined up Jack Butland as captain with Max Aarons, Giga, Fernandez, and Mikoma making up the back four. Raskin, Diamande, and then Asgard in the 10 in the midfield with Moore and Gassama on the flanks and Chimiti up top. Actually, a relatively strong lineup, Mark. I think, maybe you've got the debate between Tav and Aarons aside, but of all the fit players that we've got, I think, and the players who are eligible to play tonight as well, I certainly think that's probably the strongest lineup that we could have named. I'm not sure if there's much debate over that, but you tell me.
I think it comes to that debate, are we going to field a strong 11 or not, given campaign? Also, we've got the league game at the weekend, and what's the priority? I think, obviously, Aaron's starting ahead of Tav. I think Tavernier comes in at the weekend. I think that's why he's playing there. And then also Giga's in, given where we are with Suter. And Fernandez obviously has been ever present over a number of months now in Mikoma. So that back four for me, I was slightly nervous prior to the game, but kept a clean sheet, fair play to them. There was moments where there was gaps, but all in all, I thought they'd done relatively well. Raskin and Dio, I see them being the two, just given how they two play together. And it wasn't a good night for Moore, to be fair. We'll go into more detail with that, but I think he had a bit of an off night. But again, from attacking presence, I thought we were pretty strong given options available. So, he's also went for it on that front. And to your point, given the options we've actually got available, it was a pretty strong 11. But also discussed earlier in the week on the pods, etc. How would we go about this? Would we keep it similar to what we've done with Fannin, or do we go to a more strengthened 11, which he's clearly done, especially from attacking presence, with also who's lined up. But over the piece, I thought Aarons or Tav was probably the only ones I'd probably be maybe a debate, just given what was going to go with for the weekend. But all in all, he's obviously started with Aarons, and from an attacking perspective, it was relatively strong.
Yeah, I think in terms of the options that we've got, the options we could play, I think it's, like you say, probably the strongest that we could name. Tav versus Aarons, on the one hand, we can't make Tav play every single game because his fitness is not where it was even a few years ago. And this game, while there was some debate about it on Wednesday's pods, whether it was a dead rubber or, as Kenny said, he actively wanted Rangers to lose it, I think was what Kenny was saying. That aside, it comes down to, of the 2 games that we play this week, the Dundee one probably has more impact, certainly this season, in terms of what we want to achieve. Anything about what we get out of this game won't be decided by us, just ourselves, because we're relying on what happens in the Greek Premier League, and we've got to win the league first as well. That's where it comes into play. So, of the 2 games, the Dundee one's going to be the bigger one. But nonetheless, I think it's a good habit for us to be in, winning games. As we said, it's not something we've been doing too much recently. And I think Rangers started off on the front foot as well. We were I think we had control over the game, which is something I quite liked in the Annan game, and it was good to see us continue that into a game where it's clear that there's a step up in opposition. And I think we dominated the game while not necessarily having that cutting edge. The final third has been a problem for us, not just this season, in fact, for a while. And didn't really find a way to make the breakthrough. There's a chance from Chermiti. He should probably square it to Gassama for the easy goal. But by the same token, it's a striker. You want him taking opportunities on goal. I think it's debatable for what you. I mean, it's 2020 vision, right? Retrospectively, you'd want him to square the ball. Certainly, that's the easy FIFA one. But it's your striker right there in front of goal. I think you have to give him the opportunity to try and score it himself.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. Obviously, playing back the replays, you can see Gassama squaring. He's a passing, it's a tapping. But for me, given he's not scored too many, he's also taken on. It's a good save by a goalie, but I think it's one that strikers are always going to be selfish. It's just the nature of who they are. But it's easier option, obviously, play Gassama and make that 1-0. His movement was actually pretty good in the build up to it as well, to be fair. But with that chance, he's got to square that Gassama. I know, obviously, we want strikers to be selfish and clinical, but he's got to play that pass to Gassama and for a tap and 1-0, and that sets us all fairly doors. I think you're right. We've started relatively well. They didn't really do much. It wasn't really until about 30th minute or so, just before we actually scored, that they had any presence in the game. On the build-up, that, to be fair, Butland's made a fantastic save, and then I think it's Stanic that's put it wide. But prior to that, they didn't actually really do much. It was more us. We had more of the possession without creating too much, to say the least. But all in all, I thought, throughout that period, we were pretty dominant without doing too much. We had most of the ball, but didn't really create too many chances. But back to that point with Chermiti, I think for me, he's just got to square that. But I can understand, as a striker, he would also want to try and take the glory himself.
I think you put Ali McCoist in that situation, he takes the shot at goal, regardless of whether he misses it or not. He's going to take the shot. And yeah, as you say, Mark, we not too long after that, we do get the breakthrough, what would turn out to be the only goal of the night. Mohamed Diomande actually coming up at the end of it. I think he, in recent games, has been pushing forward much more. He's been getting himself into the box and showing a little bit more discipline, because that was certainly a problem, I think, in the early part of the season. He seemed to just be picking up red cards for fun. And he seems to have knocked that on the head a little bit. I think he's still going to be a physical and aggressive player, but he seems to have just started avoiding picking up needless yellow cards. I mean, with this referee tonight, who knows? We'll come on to talk about him for sure. But again, all starts from a set piece. Well worked between Magoma and Asgard. I think it's actually a really good ball in eventually from Asgard, and Diomande does well to get on the end of it. But it's helped immensely, I think, by Chermiti's hold-up play from the ball in. Does really well to just keep the ball active, keep the ball alive, and gets it out to Diomande. And it's a relatively straightforward finish. Still has to do well, but it comes at a good moment for us. And yeah, happy to see it happen. Dio obviously enjoying the goal as well, and I think it was the first time the crowd came alive as well for the evening, because we got a bit of Dio song straight afterwards, which was nice to hear.
Yeah, no, it's like piece, to be fair. In all fairness, I think there's a couple of moments in that build-up, to be fair, with Mikey Moore challenging the defender.
Yeah.
Chermiti, in all fairness, his strength, a couple of touches there, keeps it alive. And then Asgard, he controls on his thigh, and that little flick to Dio sets him up, and he obviously places it under the goalkeeper. So for Asgard's touch on that to just set him up was excellent. But Chermiti, in all fairness, he just never gave up on that, kept challenging, managed to get that flick to Asgard first to then set up Dio. All round, good finish for Dio. And in all fairness, I think the last few weeks he's came on to a game for us. I think you're right, earlier on in the season, there was moments he was just all over the place, where he's had a bit more discipline, and not only his game but his positional sense as well. And I thought tonight he was excellent. He's probably our best player for me throughout the night. But it's a good goal. And just that moment there, was it about 10 minutes or so before half time? He's finished it well under the goal, and obviously the goalkeepers had no chance.
Yeah, and I mean their goalkeeper was certainly aggressive. Got very angry with his teammates in the second half after Finlay Curtis' attempt. But yeah, I think, as I said, the first half, not a great deal happened. We get the goal, but I think it's fair to say there wasn't a lot of attacking happening for either side. There wasn't a lot of good work at the final third from either team, I would say. In the second half, we do make some changes. Miovski coming on for Mikey Moore, who I think it's fair to talk about him because we've praised him often enough on the pod. Didn't really have a good game tonight. I don't know whether that was an element of frustration in struggling to get past the Ludogorets players, or if it was just it wasn't his night. Certainly, he wasn't getting a lot of protection from the referee. But yeah, it wasn't a particularly good game from him. I think it was a good substitution to make, and we did get to see Miovski and Chimiti playing together for a brief period, and that was that's always going to be interesting to see, even if unfortunately it didn't pay off.
Yeah, I think it just wasn't Mikey Moore's night, and I think he's better than that 10 than where he was tonight. He's a bit more on the right hand side, wasn't he? I just think even in early on in the season when Russell Martin was playing on there, I don't think he's influential there. But in all fairness, he had that chance the second half, and that doesn't matter what position you're playing in. I think for me, he's got to do better there as well, where he plays into the keeper's hands. It's good build-up play as well at the point, and then it comes to him, and he's also just tried to dink it, thinking the goalkeeper's going to go down, and he's going to just push through that and make it two. But he doesn't. But I think I just summed up his night. There's just things that just weren't paying off for him. He had a few moments, where he was going by players, and then his final ball was just letting him down. Just one of the nights from him. And I think you're right. We've praised him plenty on this pod, and rightly so, given how he's performed. But tonight just was not a good night for him. And in all fairness, just when it came to that chance, I think it's clear just where he was tonight. He just wasn't there, and he's got to do better.
Yeah, Miovski, I think when he comes on, doesn't unfortunately impact the game too much either. For a player coming off of a hat trick, he definitely didn't look like he'd found his shooting books quite yet. There's that moment, I think, just shortly after he comes on, where he's got a gilt-edged chance in the box, and he tries to do a back heel to a player who's already run away from him. I think it's a really wasted opportunity, and unfortunately, especially in the European game, you're not going to get too many opportunities. So the ones that you do get, you've got to make them count when you get them. I think it was disappointing that he failed to take that one, but you got to hope it will come in time. Certainly, if you want to work out the mistakes, this is the kind of game to do it, because ultimately we won it. But in the moment, you're absolutely screaming and shouting that he needs to bury that one.
In all fairness, I think Dio creates that just with his turn, and he's played it on the play from. I think McCoist was right on commentary where he says the pace of the ball's perfect to just hit that first time. As soon as he takes that touch, the moment's dead, and then he has a couple of hours in it, and the moment's passed. But I think given from Friday getting his hat trick, he thought he'd be a bit more full of confidence, but he's taking that touch instead of hitting it first time. For me, I think it's just given the nature, the pace of the pass. It's set up for him just to hit that first time, put it past the goalie, but for some reason, for whatever that may be, he's taking that touch as soon as he does, kills the moment, and the chance is gone. Yeah,
we certainly didn't hold back at that point. Finlay Curtis, just moments later, has an excellent strike at goal. It looked like an absolute belter, and the keeper pulls off a really good save, and then lets his team know that he was, I think, mildly annoyed by their efforts in defence. Looked incandescent. But again, it's what Finlay Curtis offers. And I think if we didn't have Andreas Skov-Olsen coming in, you'd feel disappointed that we're letting him away on loan, because he certainly showed what he can offer, even at this level, which not many of us were expecting. It was a fantastic attempt at goal. I think it would have been just rewards for him, and it was a really good save. It had to be to avoid us making it 2-0.
Yeah, no, fairness. I thought when he came on, he was actually a bright spark for us. He was pretty positive. he had that moment, as he says, coming on his weaker foot. He's hit it with his left, and the goalie's pulled off a good save. But I thought, all in all, he's worked great. He's very positive when he got the ball, being direct. He got a foul towards the end as well, where he's got the ball, he's laid into Miovski, and he's laid it back, but the boy's obviously taken him out. But I thought he was really, really positive. And in all fairness to him, he's came under Danny Rule, and even early in the season, he obviously had a couple of goals, and then he was out of the team for a bit. But in all fairness to him, anytime he's involved, he's been really positive from my perspective. Anyway, I think he's done well. But if Skov Olsen's obviously going to come in that position, I think for me, for his development, if there's a loan, I know there's rumours like Kilmarnock, etc. I don't know where that's at, but for him, and I think for his development and for Rangers' benefit, him going on loan, getting game time is going to be beneficial for him and also the club. But he was really, really positive at the European stage as well. He's not shy, and I thought he took it on really well. And he was a positive. For me, he was fairly positive and pretty direct.
Yeah, I think just on the Killy thing briefly, I believe that is pretty much done. It may just have been a case that we've actually held it up so he could play in this game before he heads out. I think Killy is a good fit because I think he will get played. It's more Premiership experience as well for a team who need to buy themselves some victories. I think it's a good move because it will get him game time. It guarantees him more game time as well. And I think he's the type of player who can excel. I would hope that he comes back in a position where we can start using him regularly in the first team, even if he's competing with, a new £10 million striker or winger, that we've just signed. But, that's next season's problem. We'll worry about that when that comes. I think if you come back to the game tonight, Ludogorets were, I think, pushing in those final sort of 5-10 minutes. And this is the point where it gets a bit squeaky because you start counting all of those chances that we've, not capitalized on. And we wanted to put the game to bed prior to that. And we know that with only a single goal lead, all it takes is one mistake and we can find ourselves deprived of that first European victory. But I think despite their efforts, there's chances Gassama switches off and they get through. They have some opportunities, but apart from Jack Butland's flapping a corner that came in and a decent ball across the face of goal as well, beyond that, I can't think of too much realistically that we had to do in defence. We certainly weren't under immense levels of pressure. I think you just feel it more because you're only a goal up, and you have that tension of wanting to get the win. But we managed to see it through to the end, and once the full-time whistle blows, I think then we'll discuss the referee.
I think that's a risk when it's 1-0, in all fairness. But, apart from a couple of minutes in the first half, Butland's pulled off a brilliant save, and as I mentioned earlier, Stanic as well, putting it wide. They didn't do too much. I thought defensively they were fairly sound. I think that's the moment, though, we got a bit sloppy on the ball in the last 5. And I said Gassama switching off where the boys got in behind there, but then there was just gaps forming like out of nowhere, and it just came out of nothing, didn't it? And I said it was just a moment we didn't need. In all fairness, we were the better team over the course of the 90. Apart from, I said, even with Butland with that corner, which he'd done well all night, and then a moment of madness. But in all fairness, we didn't get punished for it, which in Europe we normally do. So it's one of them, but. Over the piece, I thought for me we were the better team. I think the only thing for me now is it's another set piece that was scored, and it's the lack of goals through open play is my only concern. But the likes of Skov Olsen and that coming into play, I think come the weekend, we'll see. I think the way we'll play will be completely different, and you'll see him tearing up for me. But that's the only thing for me where I've got my slight concerns is just. The lack of goals through open play, but we still created plenty, but just not clinical enough. That's our problem. But look, for me, we've got a win. Finally, good to get that first one in Europe. It's only taken 7 attempts, and in all fairness, if you look at that draw that we've actually had in prior seasons, prior seasons teams would have done fairly well in this run, but that is what it is, and I think now we've got one to go, and reality is we've got to focus on this league now, and let's see where it takes us. But some points for the coefficient, I think it's 450,000 you said earlier in terms of prize money. So there's some extra funds there, but we just got to move forward onto the weekend and then see how we go on.
Yeah, always happy when Rangers win, of course, and prize money is not going to hurt. Coefficient points may help down the line. I think we still need to get a result against Porto, at least a draw, if not a win, to put ourselves into a good position. But that's a problem that we deal with next season. For me, I'm completely agreeing with you, Mark. It comes down to we need to start focusing on the league now and the cup as well. We've still got 2 different chances to win silverware this season, and that's where our focus needs to turn to. Before we move on from this game, quick word about this referee. Gassama looked like he could have had everything done to him short of being executed on the pitch, and the referee still wouldn't have given a card for it. I think he even made the point when the ref finally gave a foul for a challenge against Gassama that there was something like 4 in at that point. You'd see him counting up on his fingers to the ref, like, what's it going to take here? To have managed, I think, unless I missed it at the very end, Ludo went that entire game without picking up a yellow card. Sorry, the keeper picked up one for time wasting right at the very end. That's a minor miracle in itself, given how, let's say, what's the nicest way to put this? How tetchy it got in the closing few minutes from both sides. The fact that they managed to get into that end bit with only their keeper managed to pick up a card is a small miracle. The fact that we managed to pick up 5, 6 ourselves, it doesn't feel like a balance in terms of how the game actually went, to me at least.
Not when you compare the fouls, like pullbacks, etc.
Yeah.
Some of the bookings, in all fairness, from Rangers' perspective, I've no complaints. The pullbacks, kicking the ball away, whatever it may be, but the referee some of the decisions were absolutely terrible. The Chimiti foul as well, I think, was at the first half when, for me, and I'm quite to say it as well, he's won the ball, he's given the foul there. There was just moments, the inconsistency was mad, and you could hear the crowd at points, just their frustrations on some of the fouls, in particular with Gassama, where he's been wiped out, yet nothing's given, and then they go up the park and similar fouls and it's given. It's just like, what's going on? No, the referee was absolutely appalling. I'm not going to swear because keep it PG, but all in all, I thought he was atrocious. But it was just that inconsistency for me more than anything, where, Rangers bookings, most of them, given pullbacks, whatever, as I mentioned, I have no complaints with that, but it's just consistency. That's all I asked for. But for me, some of them with the ref, it was just absolutely appalling.
Yeah, I think Mikey Moore can feel duly frustrated given that his collar was hanging off of his shirt after the challenge that he got booked for. He was, in fairness, pulling the guy's sleeve back, but the other player grabbed him first, so I don't know what you meant to do with that. We move on, obviously, to the Dundee game, Mark. I think we'll talk about it more. Well, I'll talk about it more, definitely, on Friday's pod. But quick word from you on what that game means and how that's going to set us up. I believe there's another game going on around the same time, at least on the same day, which may have some implications for us. But all we can do right now is focus on Rangers and what we can achieve ourselves.
Yeah, I think for me, we just got to keep going in terms of, we're 7 in a row here. It's not been pretty, but we've been picking up wins here and there. For me, it's positive. All credit to Danny Rule and the players to get to the position we're in. I think for me, the exciting part is seeing the likes of Scove Olsen playing. It'll be interesting to see where he's at from a fitness perspective. But for me, you've got to get him in. I think Chris and I discussed it last night in the pod, and I think they were right in terms of middle of the park. We were asking in Dio, I would probably keep that the same for now. And then we can sort of bed Chukwuemeka in as obviously the games go on. But, for me, we're at home. It's one opportunity for us to, pick up 3 points and kick on, really, just given it's been such a positive couple of months for the team. And, we've got ourselves in such a fantastic position now. But I'm not getting carried away just yet. I think I'll keep saying it, one game at a time. We've got a couple of difficult games coming up with Hibs, etc. as well. But all in all, every game's going to be difficult for us, just given, we're Rangers at the end of the day, and every team will treat it as a cup final. So, We go again. I think there will be some changes to that. I think Tav comes in for me. I think he'll replace Aarons. Defensively, I think Suter's out till Monday, Tuesday, they're saying. So
yeah, definitely miss this weekend, I think.
Yeah. And then Cornelius, they're saying, is back, and so Sterling. So, Sterling, I still, given the nature of his injury, wouldn't be forcing him in. But Gigan Fernandez, for me, is probably the only concern. Fernandez has been okay, but I think he needs somebody just to hold his hand and guide him throughout, because he can kind of go wandering, as we've seen tonight as well in moments. But all in all, Giga and Fernandez, if they're going to be two, I'll be slightly worried. But I think for me, Tav comes back in, and then team pretty much the same. Apart from Olsen in for Moore or Asgard, depending on if Moore goes into 10. I think he's more influential in there than Asgard. And I think the only thing for me with Asgard, and go back to tonight's game, is he's just not influencing the game in the areas I think he should be. He's got some tidy touches, etc. But he just needs to be further up the pitch. And he's got, as we've seen with the goal against Annan, he can hit it, but he's just not doing that in terms of open play and hitting shots on goal. So I'd probably rotate Moore. I know it's not been a good night for him, but I think when he's in that 10, he's more influential than what he is out wide. So and then Olsen coming in, I think for me will be the one that will get people off their seats. So I'm looking forward to seeing him in a Rangers jersey and see how he does.
Yeah, no, I'm inclined to agree with that. I think Tav coming in is a sensible move. Scott Olsen, I think Danny Rose said as much, that he probably will feature at some point, whether that's off the bench or indeed starting. And yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I think though Asgard, I think, has improved in recent games, certainly above where he was, and he's been contributing goal wise as well, and got an assist tonight. He still doesn't do enough. And I think when both players are on top form between Moore and Asgard, I think Moore's the one that you go with. But, it's a nice problem to have, where you have a couple of different attacking players, both of whom can influence the game positively. It's not so long ago that we were basically picking the least of the bad options. So a happy position for us to be in, I'll happily take that. Mark, as ever, a pleasure to have a chat with you. Always nice when Rangers are winning as well. That's always a happy time. Quick thank you to everyone who's tuned in. Nearly 3,000 of you guys watching Facebook, Twitter, and what's the other one we do? YouTube. Yes, that's the guy. So thank you all for tuning in. If you want to sign up to the pod membership, which gets you ad-free shows and little exclusives, interviews, and other bits and pieces that we do, you can use the QR code straight up there, and that will take you to the sign-up page for the membership. 700 people have signed up to that, and it's a fantastic little community we're building here. Even if you're subscribing as well, that helps immensely. Well into the 12,000s now. Yeah, geez, just downplaying ourselves. Well into the 12,000s now, and your support, as ever, is incredibly incredible. Yeah, man, you can tell it's getting late in the evening, right? It's been a pleasure, folks. Thanks to our sponsors, Rhino Express, Clivey Joinery, Athlon Industrial Solutions Limited, CSD Air Conditioning, Candies, and Local Dark Shop Online in partnership with Black Rooster and Art of Gold. Folks, it has been a pleasure. Mark, thank you again so very much, mate, for coming on. Appreciate that you went and got yourself the facial done before you came on air. So appreciate that, man. I want you looking good for the pods. We all put the effort in. So yeah, thank you for that, man.
Yeah, I'm glad I was on mute there. No, thanks for having me, you bastard. But no, good to see Rangers get a win. First one in Europe. Finally good to get that monkey off our back. And in all fairness, we focus on Sunday and let's make it 8-8 and carry on.
Absolutely, mate. Could not agree more. My thanks again to everyone tuning in, whether you're listening or watching. Thank you so much. If you haven't seen it already, and how would you have? You've been tuned in here all the time. You've been watching us live. If you've not seen it, go over and check out the vlog. Kenny and Stevie, I'm sure, had a lovely rainy night on the gantry. And we move on to Sunday. We'll be back here Friday night to talk through that game. And then, we move on and let's keep on rolling. Thanks again for tuning in, folks, and until we talk to you again, bye for now.
The Four Lads podcast is sponsored by Rhino Express, Clydeview Joinery, Athol Industrial Solutions Limited, and CSD Air Conditioning, in partnership with Black Rooster and Art of Gold. Thank you for listening to or watching the podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show.